A box is a simple thing. Four sides, a top, a bottom. But this box was different. It was a coffin for the living, a cramped vessel of darkness designed to hold not a body, but a soul. For 2,643 days, this space, barely larger than a human form, became the entire world for a young woman named Colleen Stan. A world measured in inches and breaths, and the suffocating silence beneath the floorboards. The horror wasn't just the confinement. It was the chilling realization that life was continuing just feet away, entirely oblivious to the stolen existence beneath it. Before the box, there was a girl full of life. Colleen Stan was 20 years old in the spring of 1977. She was a daughter, a sister, a young woman with an easy smile and a trusting nature. She was on her way to a friend's birthday party, a simple journey from Eugene, Oregon to Northern California. Hitchhiking was common, then an element of a generation that believed in open roads and the kindness of strangers. She was not reckless, just hopeful. She carried ordinary dreams of someone on the cusp of adulthood, unaware that a single decision would sever her from that life. Her world was sunlight, open spaces, and the freedom to choose her own path. She had plans, friends, waiting, a future as boundless as the Oregon sky. That day, she stood by the roadside with her thumb out. The date was May 19th, 1977. It was a Thursday. For Colleen, the day began with a simple objective: get to her friend's party in Westwood, California. She had already hitched a couple of rides successfully, moving steadily south. The sun was warm on her face as she stood by the roadside near Red Bluff, California, waiting for the next car. The world was still hers. The air was filled with possibility, not menace. Then, a blue Dodge Colt station wagon pulled over. Inside were a young couple, their baby. They seemed safe, ordinary. A family. The presence of the child was disarming, a silent voucher of respectability. The man, Cameron Hooker, was behind the wheel. His wife, Janice, sat beside him. To Colleen, they must have looked like a welcome sight, a family offering a ride. She accepted their offer, climbing into the car and settling in for the next leg of her journey, completely unaware she had stepped into a carefully laid trap. The initial part of the ride was deceptively normal. There was conversation, the mundane chatter of strangers. Colleen had no reason to suspect the darkness coiled beneath the surface. The couple was practiced, their demeanor calibrated to inspire confidence. They were predators in the camouflage of normalcy, their hunting ground the open road. The shift was sudden and violent. After driving for some time, Cameron pulled off the main road onto a deserted, lonely stretch of land. The pretense of kindness evaporated. It was here the true nature of the encounter was revealed. Cameron, armed with a knife, subdued Colleen. The friendly couple transformed into her captors. The ordinary station wagon became the first of her prisons. In that desolate spot, her world shrank from wide-open possibilities to the terrifying confines of their control. Her journey was over. A different, far darker one was just beginning. A faded color photograph from the 1970s of a smiling young Colleen Stan. This story is more than a crime chronicle. It explores the terrifying depths of human cruelty and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. The destination was not Westwood, but a modest trailer home in Red Bluff, California. This was the home of Cameron and Janice Hooker. From the outside, it was unremarkable, another dwelling in a quiet, working-class community. It was a place no one would look at twice, a perfect shield for the horrors planned within. For Colleen, crossing the threshold felt like stepping into another dimension, one governed by her captors. Cameron aimed to strip her identity, break her will until she became an object, a possession. He used physical torture, sensory deprivation, and relentless indoctrination. He forced her to sign a grotesque slavery contract, a document that in his mind legitimized his ownership. This piece of paper was a powerful psychological tool, a constant reminder that her old life was gone. The initial days were a blur of terror and disorientation. Colleen was kept in isolation, often blindfolded and suspended, her senses assaulted, then deprived. Cameron fed her a terrifying fiction, a shadowy organization called The Company. He claimed they were always watching, that they had her family under surveillance, and that escape would bring dire consequences to her loved ones. This lie became his most potent weapon, a cage of fear far stronger than any lock. It forces us to look at the placid surfaces of suburban life and ask what lies beneath. After the initial period of seasoning, as Cameron chillingly called it, he constructed Colleen's permanent prison. It was a wooden box, roughly the size of a coffin, slipped under the double bed he shared with Janice, carefully crafted for its horrific purpose. It had hooks, latches, a small ventilation system. Cramped, airless, the place she spent the majority of the next 7 years. Up to 23 hours a day confined to the box, let out only to be abused to perform chores to serve her captor's needs. Life inside the box was a living death. Nearly absolute darkness, slivers of light through the cracks, stale, suffocating air, time lost meaning, an endless cycle of darkness, fear, waiting. As the years crawled by, Colleen Stan's existence was methodically erased. To the outside world, she had simply vanished. Her family and friends were left with a void, a gnawing uncertainty that consumed their lives. They filed missing person reports, they searched, they hoped, but every lead went cold. The trail ended on that lonely stretch of road near Red Bluff. Inside the Hooker household, Colleen's life was reduced to a grim, repetitive routine. Her days were dictated by Cameron's commands. When she was let out of the box, it was often to perform domestic chores. The children grew up knowing her only as a quiet, subservient presence in their home. By forcing her to participate in their semblance of a normal life, he blurred the lines between captive and family member, cementing her psychological bondage. It was a constant battle to hold on to her identity, before the box, before the contract, before her name was replaced with the designation K, a ghost at their feast. For years, the Hooker household presented a placid and unremarkable face to the world. Cameron was a mill worker, Janice a housewife, neighbors who kept to themselves. The routine was meticulous, the facade nearly impenetrable. The screams were silent, the prison invisible. Yet no structure is without flaws. The first significant cracks began within. Janice Hooker. A participant in Colleen's captivity, she was also a long-suffering victim of Cameron's abuse. Guilt, resentment, and a dawning sense of her own entrapment ate at her resolve. Inside, the dynamic began to shift. As Cameron grew confident, he allowed Colleen small, calculated tastes of freedom, longer time out of the box, jogs, yard work, even a hotel-maid job. He believed his brainwashing complete. This was his fatal miscalculation. Racked with guilt, and fearing he intended to take a second slave, Janice confided in Colleen. She confessed there was no company. It was a lie. The revelation was the key that unlocked Colleen's psychological cage. The invisible walls began to crumble. Well, that was the turning point. Even in the deepest darkness of the box, Colleen Stan's spirit refused to be extinguished. Survival became an act of quiet, internal rebellion. She clung to the small things that made her human. She would retreat into her memories, family, friends. She pictured their faces, recalled their voices, and held on to their love. She found ways to mark time. She listened for clues, the sounds of holidays, the seasons shifting in temperature. Mental exercises kept her tethered to reality. She found solace in prayer. When allowed out, she maintained quiet dignity, a mask that hid a mind observing, calculating, waiting. Every moment outside was a chance to study the house, the dynamics, the weaknesses. The most powerful rebellion was hope. She never fully accepted this fate. She believed she would be free. Hope became active will, fuel for survival. She absorbed the truth about the company and began to plan her final act of rebellion: escape. The confession from Janice that the company was a lie changed everything. Paralyzing fear was replaced by clarity. Resolve followed. She understood her captor was one man, not a vast organization. A direct escape was risky. Cameron was volatile, violent. She had to wait for the opening. The opportunity came in August 1984. By then, she had more privileges, even a family visit. He took her himself, confident she wouldn't speak. He believed she was too brainwashed. He was wrong. Seeing her family hardened her resolve. She knew she could not go back to the box. After the visit, Janice helped her, drove her to a bus station, gave her money. On August 1st, 1984, Colleen Stan boarded a bus and began the journey home. Truly home this time. Every mile was a step toward light, even as fear lingered. Arriving home felt surreal. A miracle shadowed by horror. For days, she was too terrified to go to police. With Janice Hooker's confession, the legal system moved swiftly against Cameron. He was arrested, charged with kidnapping, rape, and false imprisonment. The 1985 trial became a media sensation. The challenge, explaining 7 years of captivity without escape. The key, Stockholm Syndrome and the power of coercive control. Colleen testified, detailing systematic abuse and the terror of the company. Janice, in exchange for immunity, became the star witness, describing the abduction, the box, the routine. The box itself spoke volumes, silent, chilling truth. Ultimately, the jury found Cameron Hooker guilty. In 1985, he was sentenced to 104 years in prison. Justice, in the legal sense, was served. But verdicts don't erase scars. They begin a different journey, the long path of healing. Closure for some, recovery for her was just beginning. Freedom did not bring instant peace. After 7 years, re-entering the world was daunting and disorienting. Simple things, sleeping in an open room, making her own choices, speaking freely, were sometimes frightening. The wounds were deep. Healing would be many small steps from darkness. She reconnected with family. She married, had a daughter, and rebuilt a sense of normalcy once unimaginable. She chose privacy, focusing on well-being and family. At times, she shared her story to help others understand coercive control. The girl in the box became a case study, how abuse thrives in secrecy behind ordinary facades. Her survival is testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Colleen Stan did not just survive. She reclaimed her life, her name, her future. She walked out of the box and became a symbol of survival and the unbreakable will to be free.